Welcome to the video. What do I have here? It's a custom shop Gibson SG, and I'm really excited to be part of a project where we're going to transform this guitar, this SG, into a full-blown Eddie Van Halen Frankenstrat, and it's going to be wild. And I mean, like every detail that you would see on the Frankenstrat, we're going to put on this thing. When it's done, it's going to go in the hands of Phil X, the lead guitar player for Bon Jovi, his own band, The Drills, and countless albums and stuff. He's been all over the place. Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, Tommy Lee, you name it. I mean, and he's Canadian. Comes from just down the road here, so that's exciting. This came into the shop through my good friend Scott at Fugly Guitars. And Scott and Phil have been talking about this for a while, and they came up with the plan to do it, and they decided to bring me into it to do the routes. And I'm really excited. I can't wait to start plunging my router into this. I've already been working on some templates, and I'll discuss, what we've done so far to get to this stage. This is a blank canvas. That's what we asked for from the Gibson Custom Shop, is a blank canvas so we can do all this stuff to it. Look, right off the CNC, no hand sanding or anything yet. So, all right, this is going to be a fun project, and if you're a Gibson guy, you're going to love it. If you're a Frankenstrat guy, you're going to love it. Let's get started with getting the routes done. I'm all set up here. I've got the template in place. This is the first template, as we can see here on the guitar. Just gotta have it clamped down here, held in place. It's pretty secure. And you notice it looks like single coils, and that's what we're doing first because I've got my project body over here. I'm also working on a Frankie at the moment. If you follow my channel, you know I'm doing that. This is called a ghost route. Eddie bought his body off of Wayne Charvel, and originally it was a 3 single coil pickup route. And then Eddie had that routed out a little more, but it didn't go quite as deep the second time, so you can still see the original routes, and that's what we're trying to replicate here. So we have to start off with the single coil route, and I've only got 2 here because this is an SG, and Phil was a little concerned about taking too much wood out in front of the neck, and so was I. You try to leave as much as possible because an SG is so much different than other guitars, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back later with a less deep, more shallow route. And you won't notice when the guitar's finished because there's switches and there's a dummy pickup that goes in there. It's all going to be hidden, but we're going to try to keep the neck joint as strong as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do are the 2 single coils, and then later on there's the third one that's going to come in later. All right. Pretty well. Let's take a look here. A little bit of rough here. That's nothing to worry about. That's just a little sandpaper. We'll get rid of that. Love the smell of mahogany. It's like barbecue sauce. It really is. It makes me hungry. So you can see that's as far as we're going to go with the really deep route, because you see the neck comes in that far, because you can see an SG, that's where the neck joint is. Like most guitars, it's up here. Just got the second template clamped down and we're ready to go. And it's funny, I said, we can just sand those little fibers off. They're gonna disappear in a couple of seconds. Of course, this is the Frankie route, and the little single coil. You can see how much we're going to take out. It's quite a bit, and that's going to create those ghost lines. So the original Frankenstrat, I think, was routed with a much narrower bit than what I have. I go with the 1/2 inch with the bearings. I don't have any thinner ones with bearings on the top like that, so I may have to come in some of these areas by hand just to shape it a bit more. But it's a Frankenstrat. We're not trying to get perfect, right? Can't wait to get this one done. All right, you can see those ghost lines in there. Very faint. It's not like they're, you know, very prominent, but it's an important part of that route that those are there. Take that off. We're getting there. We're getting to the Frankie SG. One more route, the shallow one. Here's just a quick look. This is the template that I'm using, and I'm putting spacers underneath to get the right height. That's what it looks like on the bottom. Kind of messy, but you know, you do what you got to do. I just line up my center line here, just like that. And then I have this neat little thing here where it fits right into the neck pocket or onto the neck there. Just set up the last template, round 3. And this one is, this one's a little different. Just taking off little areas in here, along right there, and of course the whole third neck single coil. This whole Frankenstrat route wasn't done in one day. It was done in different times, and that's why there's different heights. So that's what we're doing, is replicating the last little bit that was taken out just before he painted it red, before Eddie painted that red. So, all right, I'm going to set up the router, and we'll rip that wood right out of there. Let's take a look, see what we got here. This should look pretty much, it's a little dusty in there. We'll clean some of that away. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm really happy with that. You see the ghost lines, everything looks the way it should. You have these parts that are at a different height. And you don't notice that that's at a different height. And I'm going to put some parts in here in a second, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But Eddie always said that he chiseled it out, but the majority of this was definitely a router. But there are some marks in here that look to be like chisel marks, and right along here and up in here. And I'll go in and do that after, when I start cleaning it up. I'm going to go over all of this really closely and compare it to my little template that I did. I worked this out on the computer. That helped me get everything precise, and I worked this out from a photo taken at the Met of the actual Frankenstrat, and it was taken dead on, and I decided to use that and see if it would work. And then of course we made a lot of modifications and compromises to fit the SG body, because we wanted to bring it back a little bit here because it was a little close to the edges. So we made a few changes like that. I'm going to go over this later, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to put some parts in there just to get some shots so you can see what that looks like. There we go. I just popped some parts in there just quickly. But you can see here that does not appear to be a lower or a shallower route than over here. Like I said, it keeps the integrity, or as much as we can, in that neck. And if just compare these two, you can see one is much thinner. These are both dummy pickups, these single coils. So that's why we decided to put the thinner one in here. So we keep that shallow route. And there's no magnet in there either, so that's really good. There's no draw on the strings. We're going to send some photos off to Phil X tonight and see what he thinks. I'm sure he'll be pretty excited. Yeah, it looks like. We'll just take this stuff out there. There you go. I had to rework a few areas. Just I couldn't get that detailed, obviously, with a router. I mean, Eddie always said he chiseled this out, but it's obvious that most of it was done with a router, like up in here. And I think he did use a chisel eventually. There's just all kinds of different marks in there. But when I was working this out on the computer and working out my templates, I discovered a few things, again, that I didn't realize, because I've been working on my project body here, and I've been adding things since the Met pictures came out, adding little bits of detail, and then I discovered even more things. So this is actually more accurate than mine, even though we had to adjust things, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I discovered that there is a very large step back here. When he put in 79, he put in a tele pickup back here, so he must have routed out or had somebody do it back here. But what I added was back here, there's a little nick. It just touched when they were going around here with the router. They just nicked it a little bit. So I added that with my Dremel. This piece down here, when I looked at the Met photos, I discovered again that there is a little step, but it looks like maybe Eddie snapped it off like with a hammer, or maybe a pair of pliers just kind of broke it off. Because in older photos, this piece is intact. We can see that. And then there's a little weird mark here. I don't know what that is. It's just I don't know if he hit it with a router or what it was, but I just wanted to put that detail in right here where the mystery tape goes. Oh man, and I put a little bit of epoxy in here. There was a little gap where I didn't get deep enough with the original epoxy for the neck joint there at the end. There was a little gap, so it's looking good. I'm really happy with this. I showed Phil some pictures of this, and he was like, "Oh man, you're killing it." So I'm sure he's pretty happy about how it looks. This would be a good time to talk about how we got to this stage. I've had this guitar now for about 2.5 weeks. Scott brought it over to my house the day after it showed up at his place, and we sat it on the kitchen table. We put some black masking tape on just to see how the stripes would go. Laid out some paper templates and things like that just to start to see how, we knew we would have to move things around. Then I moved from there to some computer mock-ups, some Photoshop stuff, so that I could send that to Phil and we could actually work out some real measurements of where all the parts are going to fit, how they're going to work with each other. And we did a lot of work back and forth. We pulled it back a little bit. Looks a lot better on these edges. So I had to shrink these pieces. I couldn't scale down this whole route because the real size pieces still have to fit in there. So it's in between that I shrunk it down a little bit. And the only way you would tell is if if the real Frankie or a replica were sitting right beside it. But other than that, you're not really going to tell. Man, oh man, this is an exciting project, and it's really coming along nicely. This looks really cool. I've never seen a Frankie route in an SG before. This is a first. Moving right along here, I just made the control cavity route. A circle with a little divot in it. There we go, that's it right there. And Phil said just make it big enough for the pot, so that's what I did, just a little bit. And that's a good thing too, I think. We're taking a lot of wood out of this and, keep it to a minimum, I think. Nobody likes a neck-heavy guitar, but that little divot I'm going to put towards the control cavity or the pickup route because there was a little bit of a design change here. Originally we had like a little trench, we called it, and Phil said to niche, get rid of the trench. So we're going to drill through. So that's why I have the little notch there so that there's less wood to drill through. And then we can move on to the output. Just setting up for the output route. And this one is actually pretty tricky because the Fender output plate isn't really meant to be in a SG. And if we just take a look here on the side, there's not a lot of room here when you look at that space here. So I'm going to drill a hole, which will be the deepest part, to accommodate for the for this part to kind of dive down into for the jack. And the rest is going to be a more shallow route. But we have to have that depth, obviously, or else plugging your guitar would be really difficult. Alright, the last route is done, and I had to do a little massaging here with my Dremel because this part of the jack comes down pretty low. And like I said, the SG body just isn't made for a Fender output jack, so we had to be really careful. This gets pretty close, I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch, maybe less than that from the back of the body. So that's why I try to keep this as small as possible. Well, it looks like my work here is almost done. One last thing to do, and that is take this very long drill bit, put it in my drill, and what I need to do is some raceways between the routes. So, you know, the pickup needs a little tunnel for the wire to go through to get to the volume pot and then to the output. And we need a little tunnel, a little raceway to the bridge. And this is creative drilling. This is done by hand. You go in high, come out low, and hopefully everything works out. Well, my work here is done. All the routing is finished. I'll show you in a second. These parts are just sitting on it for show right now, just to mock it up. Some of these parts will be on the guitar when it's finished, some not. I just put these in place to give you an idea of what it looks like. It looks pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of myself for all the work I've done. Worked hard at this, and I learned a lot. Working out the route, I learned things that I didn't know before about that route, and I will be applying those to my Frankie project that I'm working on. So it's weird how this came along when I was working on a Frankie project. Let's check this out. Let's take everything out. Look at this. As it should be. There you go. All done. What a funny looking route here. But it works. Does its job. Looks so clean in there. Love that. It's going to look so cool with some paint on it. Alright, well, now it's time for me to hand this over to Scott, and I get to watch him paint this, and I can sit back and relax. Maybe have a beverage or two. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here.